Back in sometime in 2015, it was around maybe October, I was on a history field trip with my friend, which we'll call him Alex, and another one, which we'll call him Dalen. Dalen and I, along with Alex, were really good friends at the time, and we all had the same history class. Now, sometime around maybe in the end of September, our teacher from history said he announced that there was going to be a history field trip. It was going to take us to a museum that was basically about the historical stuff that happened in years ago, like World War One and etc. Now, me, Dalen, and Alex were all going to go on this field trip together, and we couldn't wait to go. We also did hear that it looked very old, but that was because of the age of it. On the day of the field trip, which was sometime in October, we went on the bus, and the bus took us to this museum. We were split into groups, and Alex and I, along with Dalen, were in the same group. So we did for the first half, which was a few stations, which of course we learned about the stuff that was used in World War One, such as the weapons and etc. We even learned more about the history. Now, this is when it gets really weird. In the second part of it, which we obviously do know it was a second part, the second part of the field trip, it was around lunchtime and we were all having lunch. And of course, since the lunchtime was going to be an hour, the teacher said we could have time to look around the museum if we wanted to before we had to be back to get into another, well, you could really say another station. So Dalen was going out to explore the area, and me and Alex did as well. As we explored the area, we came across what seemed to be really thick trees. The trees were pretty thick in the area, so we didn't really have any much problem or anything like that for that matter. We ended up walking over what seems to be a really interesting area. Now, I know the area was kind of used to during the pioneer times, which most kids when they were younger have done that. We ended up looking around and we could see, and I quote, that there was someone in, that we saw something. I didn't know what it was, but it looked like a woman, but suddenly vanished, and I wondered what the hell was going on. None. So we decided to just to check it out the area. We suddenly heard what seemed to be a woman crying, and as soon as we heard her crying, Yane, we ended up seeing her, and we ended up having to go find out why was she crying. So we ended up following the woman, finding out why she was crying. But of course, when we were going closer and closer, we got away from the group of school. Now, further in the woods, we saw a big open field with some trees behind it, and we found what seemed to be an old abandoned cabin. The cabin looked run down, and it looked like nobody had used in a while. So Alex and I decided to go in, and that's when we realized the crying was on a loop. We didn't want to know who or what was in there. We're thinking somebody was trying to probably lure us. Me and Alex got out of that area, and we went back to their group as soon as we could. But as soon as we got there, we told Dalen about what we saw, and he asked if he should tell the teacher. And I said no, as we never told anybody about this story, fearing that we would get into trouble, but we never told anybody about this story. And we never went back to that place again. This happened back in 2016, near the end of the school year, and it was nearly in June. Our teacher decided we would go to this, what seems to be, well, kind of like a little splash pad. The splash pad area was pretty big, even though it was pretty busy with some other school, but we decided to play and even hang out near the splash pad. There were picnic tables, and we were having a picnic, which most of us brought our own lunch, while one of the teachers had brought their food, such as something to share with everyone. Now, during the time of the story, my mom and my brother were there as well, and I was about 17. We were all sitting down on the table when we got to the place, as we took a city bus, and we ended up eating when we got there. Now, as we were eating, I ended up looking around the area, as there were some people. There was even a strange man, or what seemed to be a homeless man, He just seemed to be sitting on the bench. He didn't really seem to be interactive or anything. So I am assuming that he might have been, well, just maybe some guy just sitting around on the bench. I ignored him and continued on with my my lunch. But as soon as I was going to play in the water, I decided to go to the washroom as I needed to go badly. Now, when I went to the washroom and I sat down, I ended up hearing footsteps, thinking it might have been a teacher or one of my friends, but I looked to see that there was a man who was standing right in front of me. I knew it was him because I could tell he looked to be the homeless man that I remembered from outside. I nearly screamed and called for help, as I thought this guy was going to try to go under the stall. I was feeling very scared as he was just about to do that, when one of the mothers, or what seems to be one of the teachers, said, "Hey, what are you doing in the girls' bathroom?" The homeless man just stopped what he's doing and then walked away, and then he was just out of sight. It revealed to be that it was one of the parents of one of the young kids. She said, and she quoted, that this man was trying to get under the stall, and I said that I was in there and I didn't know what this guy was thinking of doing. Now, with that being said, I never saw him since then, as when I got back out, the homeless man was already gone, as I never got the chance to tell my mom or my teachers about this, fearing that they would probably have canceled the rest of the field trip and called the cops and explain the situation. I never saw that homeless man again, and I really hope it stays that way. When I was about maybe 12 years old, my class in grade 7 were going on this little field trip. We were going on this field trip to what seems to be a nature reserve, or quote unquote in this case, kind of like a center where you get to learn about how these people make maple syrup and etc. Now, the place itself was a pretty interesting place, as they have paths that leads to nature areas. There were a couple of bears in the area, but we knew what to do, as our teachers had given us instructions on what to do if things go wrong. We were also doing some geocaching on that day, so I was with a group of my friends. For the privacy reasons, I was in a group with 3 girls. For the privacy reasons, I'm going to say their names as Abby, Melissa, Megan, and Megan. They were all really nice girls, even though they seemed to be around maybe close to 6 feet tall. I didn't really care. But they were pretty nice girls at the time of the story, so we were all in a group, which we were doing some geocaching. We brought some valuables that didn't mean anything to us very much since we were kids, and we also brought some of our old stuff. With that being said, the teacher gave us a map of where the geocaching areas are located, and we proceeded on. We were going into the forest away from the group, as the teacher said to us to come back in an hour or so. As long as to make sure that everyone was still there. We were doing our usual thing, going to find out what's going on in the next part, when all of a sudden I realized something was not right at all. I didn't honestly know what it was, but something in my gut say that someone or something was watching us. I didn't really know or couldn't really understand who or what was watching us, but something was very unsettling to me. Now, Abby and I were just trying to figure out where the next geocaching location was, and as we were doing that, Melissa pointed out that there was someone that they had not seen before in the woods. I ended up looking up, but I couldn't see anybody, as it looked like someone was just, wandering around. We thought that we might have been on some private property, but something in my gut told me that this was not some strict property owner. Now, with that being said, I was getting really weirded out by it and didn't want to even think about this. But this was starting to get really strange, so I didn't really pay much attention. So with that being said, I walked up what seems to be a young boy. He looked to be 18 years old, and he looked like he was around maybe 5'7.5", and he seemed to be looking like he was 18 or 19 years old. He wore what seems to be ripped jeans and even a shirt, who seemed to be a tank top, but it was ripped at certain parts. So I was pretty confused, but I didn't know what this guy was doing. If this guy was some strict property owner, why couldn't he just told us to leave? This wasn't his property anyway, that's what the people of the field trip said. I looked up at him, and I just walked over there just by myself as he was hidden behind the tree of the forest. He said, "My uncle kicked me out of the house. I have cousins who live up not far from me. Can you give me a ride?" That's when I realized something was strange. Now, I said to him, we're just a bunch of 12-year-old kids, and none of us knew how to drive. And I said that they could go to this center where he could probably ask and see if he can get a ride from them, or at least get a phone so he can call. But this guy didn't seem to be really anything. He didn't really even have a car to begin with. He said again, "My cousin lives down the road, as my uncle kicked me out of the house. Can you give me a ride?" That's when I told him, "I'm sorry, dude. We really need to get going." Abby motioned me to come back, and I looked at the boy, who repeated it again, the same phrase, and I said, "Look, I don't have time for this," I said firmly, and the boy said, "You made the right decision." I immediately went back to the group, and the boy seemed to disappear, and we went back all the way to the center of the area of the nature preserve, and we told the teacher about it. As soon as we told our teachers about it, we explained what he looked like the best of our abilities. Then, with that being said, they ended up calling the security of the park rangers, and they even called the police later, and they were trying to explore the area to see if they could find anyone, but they ended up not finding anybody. The police even questioned me and Megan, along with Abby and Melissa, what the guy looked like, and we explained the best as we could about what this guy looked like. But they couldn't find him after at least an hour of searching. They couldn't find him. They still are patrolling the area, for the rest of the field trip, but they never encounter him again. I'm guessing maybe he got away, or maybe he was just trying to lure us into something dangerous. I am not sure what this guy had intentions of, but I had a feeling it was probably something not good. When I was in elementary school in 2012, we went on this little not really vacation, but a little field trip to a city, which I'm not going to give out for privacy reasons. It was a grad trip, or graded grad trip at the time of this story, and we've been doing our usual thing. When we get to that trip, we usually do lots of stuff, which of course we're doing a bunch of other stuff. Like, we were exploring this one strange and utterly old hotel. As if the hotel hadn't been used in a while, we've been looking at this hotel. The hotel that this person was taking us a tour around, it was built sometime in the 1940s. Of course, it was abandoned sometime around 1988 or 89. I don't really know what day it was abandoned or what year exactly it was abandoned, but a tour guide was showing us around that place, as it was a really old and rundown place. So, to be completely honest, it was a really creepy and old-looking place. Now, to be honest, we were wandering around one area of the hotel, as one tour guide took us around another area, while the other tour guide took another group. I was in this one group with Riley, and of course she was my buddy, and we were in this hotel room. We were exploring the hotel, mainly just looking around. While we were looking around the hotel, I ended up hearing what seemed to be a loud bang coming from down the hall. At first I didn't know if it was actually somebody banging, or it might have been something. I went down the hall and called out if anyone was there, but surprisingly I saw no one absolutely there, and this was getting strange, so I ignored it and continued down the hallway with Riley. As Riley and I continued walking, we heard another bang again, and this time it came from one of the rooms. I opened up to see absolutely nobody there. This was kind of strange, as who the hell would be yelling and screaming? And then the banging happened again. I heard the loud banging, and I called out, "Who's there?" but there was no response. We looked at the hotel rooms as they were mainly unlocked, but we couldn't find anybody as it would have been abandoned and run down for decades. We ended up just ignoring whatever it was as we couldn't find it anymore. We asked the tour guide about it when we heard loud screaming, and this is when one of my classmates were startled, saying, "What the hell was that?" Apparently, the tour guide began to explain, saying a mentally insane person was here around the 90s, and he died of starvation as he escaped from the mental asylum and went here to hide, and hoping that somebody would help him, but no one ever helped him. I'm still pretty shocked about this story to this very day. I'm not sure if this hotel still exists, as it's been a few years, but I don't know if this guy still is around. But of course, this was just something paranormal. At first, I didn't believe in the paranormal, but after hearing this scream and banging, I've realized whatever I saw that day was completely paranormal.